Okay, so we are doing this array list, which is something kind of a very nice class that works with an array. Now, working with arrays is kind of, well, straightforward, except when you'd like to do some kind of fancy things. Let's say, for example, imagine I have this array 5, 7, 2, 1, 9. Now, if I have this array, now if I would like to increase the size of an array, what should I do? Now let's say I have an array of 5. I'm going to make it just with int so I can work with it. So this is my array, equal new int, it's 5. And I'm going to put in a for loop array.length. And I'm going to initialize that array with some random numbers. Yeah, I'm going to show you something else. You know, remember we used to use random? There's another one, math dot random is something nice. But this random here in math gives you a random number between 0 and 1. Between 0 and 1, which means this is a double value. So if I multiply it by 100, now it becomes between 0 and 100. And then I'll just, because it's this is a double, I don't want it to be double. I'm going to cast it to an int, so it will give me randomly numbers between 0 and 100. 100 excluded. If I want it to be included, now this is going to become from between 1 and 100 included. So that's going to be some random thing. I'm just going to display that. And if I'd like to display, I need another for loop, or I can use the same, but I just would like to do that. I'm going to use another for loop, and this time display and without going back to the line, and then I go back to the line afterwards. Now let's see, this is an array of 5. Nice. This doesn't seem to be random. Did I miss something? Well, maybe just to make sure that I'm doing things right, I just need to do this, because if I just don't put the parentheses, only this is going to be converted to an int, and then multiplied by 100, and then plus 1. So a double value, because it's between 0 and 1, less than 1, if I multiply to make it an int, it becomes 0. Multiplied by 100, 0 plus 100, that's 0. Plus 1, that's why I'm seeing 1. Now I would like this to be, not this one to be an int, but the whole thing. After I multiply by 100, etc., then it becomes an int. Now I have some kind of random numbers between 1 and 100. All right. Now I have this thing. Now what if I have this array of 5 with these values that I have put, and then I would like to increase that array, the size of that array. Now I don't want it to be 5, I want it to be 7, would keep in the same array. Now I'm going to increase the same array increased to 7. So what should I do to have the same array increased to 7? I would like to add two values, 1 and 2, at the end of the array. What should I do to do that? Array.length plus 2? We need a for loop. For loop for what? Dot length plus 2? That's what you mean? And then? Print? Well, it's not going to work. Because what is the size of this array.length? It's still 5. Now I'm just going to have an array index out of bound exception, because now I'll make it go to some index that doesn't exist. and in this case it should become, when in this I becomes 5, there's no array of 5 because the maximum is 5. Yes?
Copy it to another array and then add two values.
Exactly, so that's one way. I need to create another array of the size of 7, copy the old array into this new array, and then I'm going to be able to add these two new values. And that's what I'm going to do. So to do that, I need to increase the size now. This array 2 is going to be my new int array of 7 now. And I'm going to have a for loop with this array2.length. We don't have to do this. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just array2 dot I is going to be equal to array I. So what I'm doing, I'm just copying this array I inside array2. But there's a problem in this code. This is going to raise an exception. That's what I'm doing. I'm initializing it here. But no, that's not what's the problem. Yes.
To add the array 2 that length minus 2, because you will only copy 5 values. So it can't fill up.
Actually, I should not go to array2.length. If you see, you can do that, but it's better to do this. Not this, but this. Why? Because I'm taking array I and I'm putting it inside array 2. If I put 2, the maximum index is going to be 6, but I don't have 6 in this array. This one, I'm going to rename it array 1. So in array 1, it's up to 5. Array 2 is up to 7. So if I make a loop up to 7, that means this array 1 is going to be having an index of 5, which is wrong, 6, which is wrong. But if I do something like this, array 1, now this is going to be going up to 5, less than 5. So the maximum index is going to be 4. So what about 5 and 6? The index is 5 and 6. Well, they're going to be by default 0. I just would like to show you that. And I'm going just to copy and show you this after increasing the array. I'm going to display that. And this time I'm going to display array 2. So you can see that there are going to be some zeros in there. So this is array 1. This is array after increase to 7. You see it's the same array but plus these 2 zeros. Now if I'd like to put something in them instead of zeros, well, I'm just going to put array 2 of 5. I'm going to put 1, as I mentioned, this is going to be 1 and 2, that's what I said. And array 2 of 6 is going to be 2. Now this just adds these two things there.
So if you change the array 1 to array 2, what's the
If I change array 1 to array 2, where?
when you initialize the array 2?
Here?
Yes.
Well,
No, I mean in for loop.
I'm in the for loop.
Yes.
Which line?
31.
Oh, here. If I change it to array 2, well, there's going to be an array index out of bound exception. Why? Because array 2 is up to 7, right? Which means it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's fine. For array 1, up to 4, that's fine. But when it becomes 5, for array 1, 5 is not a good index. That's why I have this. When it became 5, it tells me there's an index out of bound exception. So I cannot do that. It has to be array 2. Sorry, it has to be array 1. Because that's what the maximum is for this one. And then for the others, I just add them manually. Is that okay? I just would like to show you some difficulties that we need to do when we work with arrays. Another example is, now what if I'd like to insert the 1 and 2 inside here? In the middle. Let's start with only one value. I would like to add 10 in here at position. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'd like to add it in the middle, which means now my new array is going to be 5, 7, 10, 2, 2, 1, and 9. So that means in the new 1, 0, 1. So the 2 here is going to be there, and then the 3, 4, and 5. So if I'd like to do this, if I'd like to insert this value 10 at position 2 here, in the middle between these 7 and whatever these two values are, what should I do? Now, yes, you want to say something?
Stop the array from the value you want to insert the number to.
Now, first of all, let's say I have this array that is going to be randomly generated. I would like to insert inserting 10 at position 2. Okay, so what should I do? First of all, I still have to do the same thing, but this time it's going to be array of 6. And then I would like to copy the whole thing. Should I copy the whole thing? I just need to copy up to this 2. What I'm going to do is this. Let's see. I'm going not to copy everything. I'm going to copy them, and it's just an if or if else. Now, if what? If it's already if I is equal to 2, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to put array2.I is equal to 10. So when it's I is equal to 2, I'm going to put 10. And then the rest I'm going to put the other values. Now this is going to end up, I don't need to do this now. If I display now, did it, why do I have the 0 and then I left this 45?
It replaced it to this place.
Because I just replaced it. That's what I did. I just put 10 at this position 2, and then I became now increased. Let me fix this. Now let's try to understand what happens. The first time I is 0, right? Array1.land, that means this is 5. Array2.land, that's 6, because I just declared to be 6 now. This is size plus 1. I'm inserting 10, which basically just what was the size of array 1, and then adding 1 of it, one to it. Now this is 6. And then if I do something, where was I? Yeah, here. Now this is 5 because it was like this. That was the code that was in it. And this is 5. What is happening is that I put 0 in I. Is 0 less than 5? Yes. Is 0 equal to 2? No. I'm going to put array2 of 0, array1. So this is 0 in the new array, 0. Then it becomes 1. Put 1 in the same thing. Then it becomes 2. When it becomes 2, I'm taking this array2.I and I'm putting it here. Then it becomes 3. When it becomes 3, I'm putting here this value in this place, but I don't want to put this number array of I of 3. I want to have array of I of 2. So basically, you know what? I'm going to do something else. I'm going to, I don't want it to move after I put the 2 here, or I can just leave it as I as it was before. It's because I is equal to 2 anyways. But then I just would like to have the I to be decremented. Why decremented? Because I want it to be back here and not move to the next one. Be back here and then do it. And this is what is happening? It seems like this is an infinite loop. Because it's back to 2. Is it a 2? Yes, go make it 2. It's good 2. Make it 2. Oh, so this is not working the way I expect it to be working. So what I'd like to do now is find a better way to insert the 10 inside this array. Yes.
Can I take it and put it in a temporary value? And like another
Like put what?
like int temp and put the value of the number that I would replace in it, and then replace it and then put the number next to it.
Okay, what you would like to do is maybe, okay, so do this inside of like a temp, and then you put this inside of a temp. That's what you would like to do?
No, the value in the array would be 90 in this case, the one we replace. So yes, array 2 and I.
Okay, so this temp here, you'd like to put array, you mean array1 dot I. So you save this value and put it into the temp, and then keep moving. And now the problem that we have is that this one needs to be here. But now we save this into temp, fine, but we would like this 91 to be here, this 17 to be here, and then so we can have 59 there. So it's some processing. We need to do that. In order for us to do that, well, we need just to do something different. What is the thing that is different? Maybe I should have like two counters. One that counts for array 1 and one that counts for array 2. Then I have this int I is equal 0. This is I for one of them, and j equals 0. And then I'm going to increment both of them, or you know what, maybe it's going to be too much complicated. Let's just keep it separate. I'm just going to don't put it there. So I can put it here, but I just want to show you something different. Now this I and j are going to be the same, but the I is going to be up to 5, which is up to this array, array1.length. So I'm just going to bring this array1.length so you can just clearly see this is the for the array 1. So the I is for this array 1, the j is for the array 2. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this into the j for the array 2, and the array 1, I'm not going to change that. For example, here, this I minus 1 minus minus, now it's going to maybe work out. And every time I need to increment the j. Every time whatever I do is increment the j. But still this is going to make a loop again, because this is, if it's 2, I'll make it back to 1, increment it to 2, and then it's going to be an infinite loop. My point is, it's not as easy as it looks if I'd like to insert something in between. Now, what I could do, I could just find a way to do that, but this is not my point. Why am I talking about all these things? I'm talking about all these things because these are some kind of processing that takes some kind of efforts for us to do. I'm just inserting something in the middle or increasing the size. It needs to be doing some processing. Now there's a class that is already available that I can use immediately without having to deal with it. All these things, I can just remove it and use the class called ArrayList. Now this ArrayList, this is how it works. It's a class that is found in java.util, ArrayList. And this ArrayList, you have to mention what kind of data type you want this to work with. Now, this by default, if you just use something like this, is going to be an object. So this is my array, let's say. New ArrayList. Now if I do something like this, now this array, this ArrayList, I can just have some kind of, if I'd like to specify the size, I can specify the size. But if I'd like to add something to the array, I don't have to care about specifying the size in the middle. I can make the size, this class ArrayList will have the size to increase and decrease without me having to care about it. If I'd like to add something to the array, I'm just going to use array.add. I can add in a specific position if I want to, but I can add, as you can see here, it says add object. I can add whatever I want. Let's say I'm going to add some kind of numbers. This, if I put 5, it's going to add the 5. And if I put this like 57219, 5, 7, and that's me 2, 1, 9, then it's going to add these now inside the array. And if I'd like to display the array, well, I can use a for loop again with array, but it's not .length, but it's something about size. Size is going to return the number of elements in the array. So I'm just going to use this one, and this is going to be, if I'd like to display it, I'm just going to do this same idea that I was doing. Okay, what if, but array, there's no array I, array dot, I have get, and then you specify the index. And this is going just to give me back that element. And then now I'm doing basically declare an array. I don't care about the size, because as soon as I add things, it will be increased automatically. I don't need to care about that. And then if I like to display it, I can display it like this, and it's going to again get some elements. So this is how to add, this is how to get. Now if I'd like to insert, that's the good thing about it, I can insert it in a very easy way. Even displaying, you know what, I don't have to do this. Check this out. If I just put array, this class has a toString that is going to display just fine. So the toString of that is already prepared to display the array in a for loop. Yes? If you put a double, yeah, and you can do that, no problems. Because remember, this is an object, so you can take everything and goes up to object. And there's something that we're going to be talking about later, but this is the main idea. You can put a string, there's no problem, because again, this is an object. You can put whatever you want. It can have a mixed data type, no problems. Yes?
Is it only one dimensional, or can it be two dimensional?
Now it's one dimensional. If you'd like to have an array of that, well, no problem. Just make it an array list of, and then you specify how many of those you want. But then you have to do array of 0 to be something, array of 1, etc. So you can have, yeah, an array of array lists. But that's kind of very interesting array list that I can, class that I can use for that arrays.
For that one, you cannot make it random.
You can make it random, of course. You just need to just have this. I'm going to use the old one, new random, because it's less typing. New random, and then dot next int plus 1. Was it well? I need to put 100 here. So it's just going to, now it's going to give me random numbers. Because I decide what to put inside of it. Now I'll just, instead of doing this, it looks silly because I can just do this in a loop. But the point is, I can add, increase, decrease the size as I want. Now if I'd like to add another thing, just copy this, and then now I'm adding the size. I'm increasing the size. I don't have to care about it because the method add is doing this behind the scene. I don't need to care about it. It will increase for me without needing me to care about it. And if I'd like to insert something in the place, I think this instead of this, let's say I'm going to add 10. It says here add, and then you can specify this one that gives you an index. So it inserts the specified element at the specified position. Now for example, if I'd like to put the element at position 2, the 10 that I was talking about earlier, now I'm just going to insert 10 inside here. So, and then whatever was there, the 2 and 1 and 9, as you can see, they were pushed. And all these are prepared. If you'd like to look at the code, you can just click on it with the control key pressed, And then you can see that there's a lot of things that are going on. There's some kind of array copy, blah blah blah, etc. If you'd like to have a look at it, there's some kind of calls to different checks to check that the range is okay. But because what if you do something like this? I'd like to insert at position 20 this value 10, but there's no position 20. So index out of bound exception. So it raises some kind of exception telling you, well, the size is 5, and then you're trying to put it 20. This because that was 5, and then you try to put at the position that doesn't exist. So that's the nice thing about this array list. So it allows you to just have an array of anything. Now this array list is one example of what is called a generic class. Let's have a look at this. If I click on this with the control key pressed, you're going to see this is a class that is defined with some kind of weird thing. Do you see this? What does this mean? Now this means that if you don't use anything, it will be an object. It can accept anything. But what if I don't want to be having some kind of a mix of a double and float and objects or string, whatever. I just want it to be int or double or string or whatever. I can specify the data type. So I can limit the data type to something that I want. And for example, how to do that is that when you define this array list, between less than and greater than, you can put a data type immediately after the name of the class. Now if I make it now this is to be a string, you see now after doing this it will not accept ints because it's expecting text. Now by putting now this as a text, this is okay, but the others are not. But what if I don't want to be text? I want it to be int. Can I put int here? No. It doesn't work with primitive data types. These generics do not work with primitive data types. But yeah, there are some other types that are class data types of the primitive data types. You remember we've seen this integer, and now this is going to work with integer. If you try to put something else, it's not going to be acceptable because it's accepting only integers. So you can specify the data type if you want to, but if you don't specify, it's like you're doing this. If you don't specify any, it's like it's an object. An object can be anything, can be an object, and that's what is going to be the benefit of this interesting class. So you can specify the data type that you want, and then it will just handle the adding, the getting, or the displaying. So let's have a look at some of the methods that we have that are available. So obviously we have this add. Notice now it shows me integer because it's an int. If I change this to be string, now all the adds are going to be string and add element string. So it replaces this array list. It replaces this e here with whatever it is that I put in here. But if I don't put anything, now check this. Hold on. I wanted just to do a control space. You see now? If I don't put anything, it's an object. An object. And if I put something, it's going to be whatever I put. It's an integer data type that I put there. Is that okay? So that's what this array list is all about. It's an example of a type of class that is called generic. A generic class is a class that can work with different data types. And the first step is just to get to be acquainted with this array list, to how to use this class. And then the next step is that we would like to create our own classes to be generic. How can we create classes that are generic? And we're going to be talking about that inshallah tomorrow or something.
Replace the integer to int.
It's not going to work. It doesn't work with primitive data types. Yeah, it works with integer, it works with double, capital D, because this is a class. A float, capital F, this is a class. And if you see, if I click on it, it's a class. But the float with lowercase is not acceptable. The double lowercase, because it's a primitive data type, it's not acceptable.
Integer, it's a class, right?
Yeah, it's a class that is like some kind of a wrapper it's like a primitive data type, but it's a class type with other things. And you remember, in the class we had this there was like we've been using when this to convert. Remember this parse int and things like that? We're converting from text to, so it's a class that has methods. So, but these generic classes, they only work with class data types, not with primitive data types. Is that okay? So that's what it is all about. We're going to be doing some exercises just to practice working with those, and that's pretty much it. And then next step, we will create our own classes that are generic. Yes.
So the ArrayList class,
Yes.
and it has methods, but each method uses a different data type depending on what the user entered.
Depending on what.
The data type.
Yes. Whatever you declared it with the data type that you declared it with.
There's a method for each data type, or only one method changing.
You see, there's methods, but the data type is going to change based on what you specify.
So there's only one add.
Yeah, there's only one add. And actually, if you click here, see, it's add with this E. What is E? Well, we're going to be talking. This is the generic thing. The E is that what we find here. And where is the definition of the class that I'm not finding? Here. You see this E? But we're going to be talking more about that and what does it mean, how to use it, etc.
So you can set a variable to be a data type.
Exactly, in that specific manner. Like, it has to be between less than and greater than, and that's how this works. Now let's have a look, before we just close up this video, let's have a look at the different methods that are there. You see they have this add all, which allows you to add a lot of them. You have this clear is like empty the array, remove everything, if I can remove that. Clone makes a copy. Contains, it returns a boolean. Now if you're looking for some value, does this array contain a specific value? Well, you can do that. So there's a lot of this get, this index of, you give it a number and it gives you what's the position of that number, that if it's in the array. If it's not in the array, it's going to give you -1. And it's going to, this is empty, it's going to return, is it empty or not? The last index of, well, what's the difference between index of and last index of? Index of, it starts looking from the beginning. Last index of starts to look from the back. So anyway, there's a lot of these. You can remove all, you can replace, you can change a value from one value to another value. For example, I can change this 1 to another thing. I just need to remember what's the position after that. Now what is the position of 1 if I'd like to change 1 with 7? I should do something like array.set. Now what's the position for set? What does it take first? It takes the index and then the new value that I want. The new value is 7. But what's the index of this one here? 0, 1, 2, 3. No, it's 4. Why 4? Because we just inserted an element at position 2. So it was 3, yes, but then we inserted 10 in between, so it became 4. So as you can see, it was before it was 7. If I remove this, run. So you see, this is the array. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now if I change this with 7, so it's position 4. So anyway, there are a lot of different kind of methods that are kind of useful. If you're searching for a value, if it's in an array, if you'd like to just replace a value, if you'd like to find if it's available, if there are many of these, what is the last index of this 7 is going to give me this position here. Index of 7, if I use index of 7, is going to give me 1. So just as a fun, I'm just going to display that. So array, no, index of, and I'm going to put 7. So it's going to find the 7 where it is, and I'm going to do the same thing with this last index of. So you can find, you see the 2. So index of 7, the first one is this one, and then the last one is going to be starting from the back. So it gives me this. So there are a lot of different kind of interesting methods that you can find. And there's also this kind of thing that can to give you an array. You can save it back to like an array of this data type that he wanted to. Anyway, there's a lot of different things. Anyways, let's now practice working with this array list with the exercise that we have on the website.